Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of Yet to Be Named. We're still working on name for the show, but priorities. We're not going to sweat the small stuff. But um, with me, as always, is Jason Semino and Scott Williams, known as Grayson. This evening, he's borrowing his son's phone, and our guest tonight is Beau Henderson. And Beau is a retirement coach slash advisor, and I've known Beau for several years. I haven't seen him in a long time, but I was a client of his several years ago when I worked for a hospital here in the Atlanta area. And Beau was with a large retirement vendor, and that's how we got to know each other. But since then, he's gone on to do his own thing and still doing the retirement coaching work. And he everything that I can gather from his LinkedIn profile and just watching his posts over the years, he goes about things a little differently. So, Beau, tell us, first of all, how did you get into the the financial advisor slash retirement planning profession?
Oh, wow. First, hey guys, thanks for having me on the show. There's a long story. So if they get too long, just do this number here and I'll know to speed it up. But I went to the University of Georgia and graduated with my formal education was in psychology. And I was going the next fall to graduate school thinking I was going to become a psychologist. And what happened during that time, one of those life events, my father kind of suddenly passed away from lung cancer, and I was back over in Cumming, Georgia, helping mom with some real estate and his small business. And in immersing myself in those financial matters to help her, that gave me a little bit of a passion and a realization that I can still help people like I wanted to do with the psychology with financial matters. And that kind of changed my track, so to speak. And what happened from there, I needed some finance on my resume. So I finished up a finance core while working at a bank there in Gainesville, Georgia. And then my first job in the fields where I met you, John, working for a big insurance company that was working on the 403B plan at the hospital.
Mhm.
So that was my unique path there. And I thought it was so bizarre having a background in finance and psychology, but it's actually turned out to be quite perfect 20 years later.
Gotcha, gotcha. Well, okay, so you broke off on your own in '07, and what makes your a couple of questions really. First of all, I wasn't familiar with your certifications. Like I've seen a CFP.
Mhm.
Um, your certifications are a little different. Do you have a securities license and an insurance license and all the like Series 6, Series 7? I mean, that's required to sell stocks and mutual funds and that sort of thing.
To do business. Yes, I've had all the licenses over the years. And in our firm now, we have at least individuals that handle the securities or the insurance piece. So as a firm, we have them, and I've carried all of them at some point. It just depends on kind of what capacity I'm operating in, which right now, my main role anymore is to share the message and bring people to the table, so to speak, of the brand and the philosophy of how we do business. So that's kind of shifted my role a little bit over the years as I've created a team that can handle the process of financial planning. My job is kind of to share the good word, so to speak.
Okay, well, so what is that?
You know,
How do you bring in clients, and what's the attraction to your firm over someone else?
right. The firm I started with, um, one, the financial services industry is very slow. It's slow to move. It's a little bit antiquated in some aspects, and I believe it fails the consumer in a lot of ways because of that. And I was in the role when I started, and about 5 years into it, the longer I did it, and the more I knew, I was starting to see conflicts. I was being told by managers and their managers what I needed to do, even if I knew there was things better for the client to do, and that was a big conflict for me. And then the other problem I had was it was very hardcore, old school sales tactics. It was being a salesman
Hmm.
to the extreme. So what I shifted, I knew I was going to burn out in my career if that's how I had to do things for the rest of my life. So I really shifted to the model of what's more comfortable to me, and it's been being an educator and a content creator, just like you guys are doing here. you've seen, I write books, I write articles, I do podcasts, radio shows and all that. I realized if I could create content that was valuable to the people I serve, I could be positioned as a trusted resource and an authority versus the used car salesman that unfortunately a lot of people in this industry have that reputation now.
Okay. Okay. So, so as I understand it, you've got people that work for you in your firm that can handle the process of getting one set up with financial planning services. So describe for me how you'll go out and get customers.
Sure. The staying with that kind of core philosophy of education, a lot of what we do is we utilize technology to an extent and have Facebook marketing fill up local community workshops. And I'll usually do those in community centers, universities, some libraries, and I'm teaching topics like maximizing your Social Security, mitigating taxes in retirement, long-term care. And what I found is by, again, leading with the education and not the sales pitch, by the time the client's ready to meet and talk about these things, I'm positioned in a much stronger position than I'm coming in and that guy's going to sell me. All right. So that's really what we do. And we do about 3 meetings a month somewhere around North Georgia where I'm doing 1-hour educational events teaching people about retirement topics. And that's our core brand. Now we've had to pivot. So let's talk just a second. With all the COVID things we've been facing, we've had to pivot, and I've had to transition those in-person meetings to webinars. And that's been a little bit of a process to learn the nuance of a webinar versus a live event, but we have had some success with that, and we're doing pretty good now.
Okay.
Took a month or so to get the wrinkles ironed out because it is a little different animal.
Gotcha. Scott, Jason, anything you guys have?
Yeah. Go ahead. You go, Scott. Go ahead, Scott. I was going to jump in. I was going to go back to the beginning, but go ahead. You jump in, Scott.
Yeah, it's best to do the better question first.
Uh-oh, Scott froze. He jinxed himself.
That's right.
And the secondary.
Uh-oh, Scotty. Scotty, you're breaking.
So with financial planning and retirement, how about now?
Yeah, you're good.
Nothing? Now. Can you see me?
Yeah, I can see you.
Okay, sorry. So Beau, with financial planning and retirement planning and wealth management, things like that, what is the most common mistake, maybe unknowing mistake that you see people making when you work or consult with these folks? Like what's the most common thing people are doing wrong? And well, yeah, things that they need to improve on, but is there one in particular?
There's a big one. The big one, I have this conversation every day. We've documented over 3,000 conversations I've had going back to my AIG days, John. And the question is, do you have a retirement strategy? And these are people coming into me wanting to prepare for retirement. And I can count on my hands out of 3,000 people, the people that can sit there and say, I have a retirement strategy. And I'll even go further to say, do you have a strategy you understand and you're confident in? And almost no one does. What happens, I think, we get so busy with our career and raising a family that we have some pieces. I call them puzzle pieces. We'll have an IRA here, a 401k here, maybe some insurance, but there's no real strategy for how is all this going to work together. How does the income plan work with the growth plan, work with the tax plan, work with the healthcare plan? So I guess if there's one thing people do wrong is most people just get to retirement with their plan of, I hope everything will work out okay. That's their plan. And there's just a huge relief when we can take them through a process to say, you know what, I actually feel like I have a strategy and I feel like I'm addressing the things I can address. But most people just don't do that. It's as a whole, we tend to be very reactive and only deal with things after something bad happens. So that would be my advice. If you don't have a strategy, have those conversations so that you can say, I have a strategy, I understand it, and I feel confident in it. And if we can answer those 3 questions, you're ahead of 95% of your peers.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Thanks.
Yeah. Hey, Jay.
Yeah. So one of the things I picked up on, Beau, whenever you first started talking about your background, You mentioned that you initially had an undergrad in psychology,
Right.
and you know, having it done now, that probably wouldn't have been the natural progression, to psychology slash pivot to finance. But would you say that having that undergrad and that base in psychology and understanding how, I guess what kind of drives individuals and their fears and their anxieties and stuff like that, their hesitations when it comes to investing their money and stuff like that. I mean, do you feel that that's been an advantageous kind of background and pedigree to have, kind of to make you who you are, especially because some of the things that you talked about, like when you're talking about kind of transitioning the sales pitch from being kind of that used car salesman to really understanding and providing true value. I mean, would you say that was a good choice, kind of looking back retrospect?
It was a good accidental choice, right? I didn't understand it early on. It was like, that's the most bizarre education, finance and psychology. But today it's my unique proposition, right? It's what I really focus on is I help people get crystal clear on what a meaningful, satisfying retirement looks like, which is very human side, right? That's that. And then we go back to the math side and the traditional finance to make sure we're creating a plan that moves people towards that satisfying, meaningful life. And when we can tie both sides of that together, it's something unique and powerful. Right. Because here's a good thing that's come up a few times on these conversations. I've seen people with successful financial plans that weren't successful in retirement. And what I mean by that, I've seen many miserable multimillionaires at this point. Right. So it's not just the money. It's what are we utilizing our money to do and create in our life. So that's kind of where the human side kind of ties in with the math. And it seems to with when the story's told the right way, I rarely see somebody that doesn't connect with.
Right. Yeah, you definitely have to have kind of like an empathetic approach when you're dealing with people, especially when you're dealing with other people's money, and telling them advising them where they should invest or what they should invest or what they should make decisions on and stuff like that, because it's their money, so it helps to have that empathy. What are some other, I guess, soft skills that would make someone like successful in your line of work?
I think the other, besides making the client know that you care about their whole situation and not just their IRA, that's the bit we talked about. That I think another one is some of that staff that we were talking that I brought on. Their role is to make sure that our clients have a very a good experience. It's all about them having a good experience and interacting with us. And they know, hey, we care about when your grandson graduates college. Our client, they're getting cards when we find out somebody's sick, and they know that they have somebody on their team that again, we care beyond the spreadsheet. And I think that's important to people, because otherwise, again, it can be just like, oh, you're ready to talk to me when I need to shift some things around you're being paid a commission on, right? I think that's a lot of people's experience. Or we're reaching out now because we're looking for a referral. So I think the proactive high communication, and something we came up with in this environment we're in now, is that we really strive to be high tech so we can make available virtual scenarios, which we're running into now. We've just brought on recently, past couple of weeks, 2 completely virtual clients from these workshops, but we always want to maintain high touch and high tech, so that we always have that very accessible element, because a lot of people still want to sit knee to knee, eyeball to eyeball, but we can facilitate with technology where we need to and where it's convenient based on the preferences of the client.
So Beau, you have this firm, and you're the CEO of Rich Life Advisors. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And how many people do you have working for you?
There's 7 of us.
Okay.
Right.
And are they all licensed like you?
It's a combination. There's 4 of us are licensed, and 3 of us are more support, office manager, client care type of roles.
Okay. Gotcha. Where are your offices?
Right downtown Gainesville is still kind of home for me. And then we have one just off 85 around Duluth.
Okay.
Because a lot of the client base is kind of migrated around Gwinnett County over the years too.
Gotcha. So, when like the three of us are me, Scott, and Jason, we're recruiters and, we pound phones and that kind of thing. And so, and you've tried to shy away from the sales uh, aspect of this job, or tried to not employ a sales approach to this. So, and you said you do about 3 seminars of
Educational events a month.
okay.
Yeah.
So a day in the life, I mean, those educational events, they're 3, they may be all day, half a day, I'm not sure, but like you wake up in the morning, I mean, what's the first thing you do in the morning?
So yeah, so we get up and they're only about an hour and a half actually.
Okay.
It's a very topical class. So we do that. What'll happen is we've got the digital marketing dialed in. We know we're going to get 15 to 20 households show up at these events.
Mm-hmm.
I'll do the presentation and I'll offer to attendees that if you need help with any of this stuff, I've made available 10 to 15 spots to do a financial review. Right. And out of that, we'll immediately, out of a campaign, which is 3 nights, it'll typically be like a Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, all in the same marketing. We'll have probably anywhere from 15 to 20 appointments. And then immediately the next day, my team goes to work calling, confirming appointments, checking on people that registered that didn't show up. I mean, there's a real big process and systems for kind of the workshop, the follow-up. And then we immediately start doing meetings. And I've actually almost completely delegated the first meeting now is my office manager. I'm not having to do anymore, so that that's typically the meeting. Learn who you are. What are your biggest concerns? What do you need help with? What is the data we need so that your time with Beau can be as productive as possible? That's been a very nice help getting that piece. So by the time I'm meeting with the clients I'm meeting with, I would say there's a 90% plus chance that they're already pretty much saying, I want to become your client, which makes it nice on my end, right? Because in the sales world, you deal with so much rejects and everything. So I've just kind of built a system. Maybe it's to insulate my ego a little bit. By the time I'm dealing with people, we're pretty far down the process. And that's been one of the most, the hardest things for me, to go 15 years almost as a solo practitioner to the last 5 creating systems and processes that would allow this to happen. But it was necessary for me to be able to scale or grow any more than I had.
Gotcha. And I understand you've written some books.
Mm-hmm.
How many books have you written?
There's it's almost weird. I feel weird answering that. I've written 9 now.
Wow.
I've written 9. The 10 Investments for True Wealth, which is the middle book behind me, that's the first book I wrote, and it's still my favorite. And that was the book about the philosophy of integrating both the financial and the non-financial components of a successful life. And that's still really the philosophy that kind of runs through all the brands of various things I do, from the retirement planning firm to the podcast and anything else.
Right. And then you're also a contributor for Forbes. Is that correct? So
Right.
What does that entail?
So what I'll do for Forbes is, for a long time, I would pitch ideas. Here's some ideas I have. And it's really around the same ideas. It's around integrating a successful retirement. Now, I think this is probably a good thing to share here. Is one of the problems I see in our industry where it fails the consumer is a client or a consumer will go to an agent or advisor, and they're paying a fee. You're paying a fee somewhere, regardless of where you're working or how you're handling your assets. And in a lot of cases, it's just going into a computerized model, and a client's paying a 1.5% fee for that. And the message I really educate when I'm talking about integrated, I'm saying, okay, that could be what your fee's paid for, but do you really know what your fee is covering? What are you paying that money for? And the way we do things that I think is another unique messaging is I believe that fee should be covering us running point with your income plan, your growth plan, your tax plan, your tax distribution plan, your healthcare plan, your estate plan, and then all those non-financial conversations we had about life. So I think that's one of the big differentiators. I think if we don't address all of those areas, all 6 of those areas I referenced, any one of them could be a pitfall that could blow up the whole plan. So I think that integrated approach is another kind of unique way that we do things, as opposed to saying, hey, you know what, we're going to put you, based on your age, we're going to put you in this computer model and collect the fee.
Gotcha. Jason, you got a question?
Yeah, I mean, and I know that this isn't like any good financial planner worth his salt isn't going to have like a magic bullet kind of answer, but
Right.
there's always the question that like, is there like kind of like a formula or something that says like, if I want to retire, I'm X years old, I want to retire, like what do I need to, how much do I need to be saving now, or what are the things that I need to be doing now, in order to, I mean, obviously you want to save as much as you can, but it's a kind of a balancing act between
Mhm.
saving as much as you can, but I mean, I don't want to eat ramen noodles and Kraft macaroni and cheese till I'm 70 either, in order to
Right.
try to save, so is there kind of like a general rule of thumb that say, hey, listen, if you're 35 years old, you need to be trying to save X in order to be able to retire by the time you're 65 or something like that? Is there something like that, or is it just?
So I'll give you both. You're right. You're right with the deal that if I sit down and talk to 20 people situation, it's 20 different scenarios. There's not really rules of thumb, but what we can do is model, and most people do not model. And by that say, okay, I'm 35. What have I had saved today? What are my expenses the best I know today and will be in the future? What do I need to be saving per month, per paycheck to get me? So it's almost like a puzzle, right? We need to model, and then the closer you get to that goal, the tighter the model gets, but at least you're kind of pulling in the right direction.
Mhm.
And so I think as opposed to I'll run across people that are very aggressive. They save everything they can. I'll run across people that they're going to wait till they can afford to, but then 10 years goes by, 20 years goes by, and they never started. So I think a real smart way to do it is to have some kind of at least a baseline of, hey, here's my expenses are $5,000 a month adjusted for inflation. It'll be this at 60 years old. That's my goal. What would need to be saved with some reasonable estimations of inflation and average growth for me to be in the ballpark of where I need to be then. And then again, it tightens up as you get closer, but at least you're pulling towards a goal.
Mhm.
Because it's very different. When I'm dealing with retirement planning, I'm dealing with some people that have $3,000 of expenses. I had one earlier today. It was 11,000. Now, how we make those work for the next 20, 30 years of retirements, very different animals.
Mhm.
And same thing. Some people have big pensions and Social Security. Some don't. So there's variables are always going to be different. But I think modeling is the key of how we can make the best decisions possible.
Now, I mean, would you think it's a fair and accurate statement to say you're never too late? It's never too late to start kind of a plan, because I feel like right when I start getting on track, now I'm 41, and to John's point earlier, we all got ripped last week. I feel like, damn, I was on a good track, and now I just kind of fell off that wagon a little bit. Like, I almost feel like I'm gonna be working till I'm about 75 at this rate.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, you're exactly right. Now is the best time, right? And you'd be amazed. The average person in this country doesn't start saving until they're 53. That blows people's mind.
Right, I'm
That
good.
blows
I
mine.
got
But
8 years. Buddy.
what
So
that
you
looks
got about
like,
10 more years, Jason.
that's right. Yeah. Don't misquote me and say, hey, I just didn't mean to say. But what's
I'm gonna
happening
call you in
when you get
about 8 years, Beau, and be like, "Hey, you remember me?"
yeah live. But let me do a disclaimer on this, John. So that's but what's happening if you wait that long, you're having to put in probably 30,000, you're having to max out everything to try to catch up at that point. Whereas if you work on it at 41, it's a little more reasonable to balance with your lifestyle like you're talking about.
Yeah.
Hey, so I have a question.
Yes.
Speaking of lifestyle, and is there, so, there's probably a lot of folks in your industry, a lot of competition.
Mm-hmm.
Is it important, or maybe how important is it for clients or potential clients to see you in your personal success so that they can say, well, this guy definitely knows what he's talking about. Check out that car he's riding. Like,
Right.
is there a certain image or a certain kind of persona that you have to keep intact, or that you maybe it could even be just a professional level of professionalism, just to make sure that projection of, hey, I'm successful because I know what I'm doing,
with Rich Life Advisors. You know, does that make sense?
Absolutely. And there's extremes, right? I've seen advisors that are they're leasing cars they can't afford to have an image to try to attract clients. But what I find is people kind of can see through what's real and fake pretty quick. But to that point, as I was younger, driving a 12-year-old Ford Escape and maybe parking up the road a little bit just in case, I started when I was 23. There's definitely been, my clients evolve as I do. Right. Every year, my higher level clients just seem to naturally happen, but it's as my success of just hanging in this industry as long as I have increases. So there's something to it. I think even having a nice office space, we're about to upgrade our office space across town, and even that's a first impression, right? And that's I've had to try to overcome it by really good personal skills and working on that. But yeah, I think there's something to that because people do want to. You're talking about their life savings, so they do want to feel secure, and they do want to feel legit. And that's a lot of the things. Even the books originally, I was doing a lot of in the speaking, and a lot of it was to have some credibility out there because I know as soon as when I do one of my speaking events, immediately my homepage is hit because people are going home and Googling me to see if I'm legit.
Yeah.
So I'm very intentional about making sure there's things out there that are legit. There's a lot of, it blows my mind. There's a lot of people in my industry that do no work to know what people are searching when they look for you. And if you see nothing, I guess that's better than seeing something bad, but you could with some effort and work, have some things that position you the way you like to be positioned.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, cool. Thank you.
Yep.
So, Beau, we live in an era where people change jobs quite frequently, and we see it as recruiters. And it's not just the younger generation; it's people that are my age or older who may have stayed in one job the first 15 years of their career, but after that they change jobs every 2 or 3 years. It's just the world we live in now. So, what at a high level, without giving away any of your strategy, I mean, what do you say to people that might have, 10 or 12 401ks because they've changed jobs so often and that sort of thing? I mean, is it better to consolidate, or are they okay as long as it's a reputable vendor? I mean, what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, usually all those I call puzzle pieces because everybody has, it could be 3 or 4, it could be 15 like you're talking about. And especially in some of the fields I've worked with, that it kind of is, it leads to having a bunch of those puzzle pieces of multiple 401ks. Typically, you're going to look at consolidating not being a good move because a lot of times if you look at fees and redundancies and the way things are being invested, you can have a little more control and a little more options in a personal IRA than you would have in a 401k. But even beyond that, you just want to make sure those 401k assets are doing the right job in your timeline. And what I mean by that is the assets invested in the market need to be there for money that you don't plan on needing for a good 10 to 12 years in the future. If that's the case, we want to make sure those 401, if you have 10 to 12 years before you need any money from those buckets, you want to make sure those are invested in equities even right now, because the market will do what it's always done. It'll go up and down, but it'll trend up over time. Where people get caught is these retirees that I had it happen this year. Somebody came in and he was taking $3,000 a month out of his 401k, and it was down 30%, but he had to have that money to pay his bills. So as long as the buckets are identified for what do I need for income in the first 10 years of my retirement, or for any purpose, what do I have available for long-term growth? What do I need for equity? Those are the ratios. If we get right, the retirement plan will be successful.
Okay. And go ahead, Jason. Go ahead.
You were talking about talking about as long as the things are doing the right things and all that stuff, the 401ks are doing what they're supposed to be doing. Like, I always wondered this, how much of your job, and listen, I understand, I can 100% appreciate what you guys do. I can never do that because to me, it just seems like way too complicated for me. I mean, it's like astrophysics and stuff. I mean, it's just like rocket scientists, right? So, but how much of your job is luck and uncertainty and actually knowing what the hell you're doing? Because like I watch the news. I mean, it seems like everything in the world is going to hell in a handbasket, and then the Dow is up, hitting record highs on the same day. I'm like, what the hell? I don't understand what the hell is going on here. You know, you would normally think the stock market would be plummeting, everything, you know, buy because everything's cheap. And then, you know, the Dow hits record. Like, how much of that is just like, where do you actually just sit back and just kind of just scratch your head, like, I don't know, I'm out. I have no thoughts.
Yeah, so the market we can't control. I'll talk on interviews sometimes and I'll say, hey, you're talking to a guy that knows exactly what the market's going to do. I'll be, oh wow, I say, it's going to go up and go down, right? That's what we know. We got to work within those confines. So we can't control the market, but we can control our strategy, and that's what I was talking about, is really getting clear on our timeline. And if we have things invested that we don't need for a certain period of time, the market does well there. If we have the money we need and if we have the timeline and the ratios in the right buckets of money, that's where the planning comes in. Now, as far as money managers, that's somebody else that I hire. Money manager is the person that says, in that third bucket, so to your long-term growth bucket, our job is to make sure that average is 8 or 9%. That's a different animal than what I run quarterback on the overall strategy to make sure all those things are doing what they're supposed to do and they're integrated. Whereas the money manager, but they're managing the bucket of money that we can afford the market to do what the market does over time for a little higher average return. So but that's a good point, Jason, because I think it's sexier to focus on the investments and all that, but it's really about, if you have the right strategy set up, your plan will be successful.
How often do you get hit up by friends and family for free advice?
It's just expected, I think. Anymore.
Nothing's free in this world.
That's right. And then you know, and that's another good point is talking about family. It made me think of this is, if you also, when I'm bringing on a client anymore, I just want to make sure they got the right mentality, right? If they're telling me, hey, I want to invest money to average 10%, but I also want to have it available for a specific job in 2 years, you can't, the two are different, all right? If I need something in 2 years to pay for something to count on, I can't go put it out there in the market because that's something we don't know. So, so a lot of it's the mentality, and a lot of our goal, and again, with the Rich Life Advisors, I want to make sure our clients are getting smarter, and I call it raising their retirement IQ. So they're getting better at it and not just blindly trusting us because we have some credentials behind it.
Sure.
So is there any, these days, I mean, you know, back in the 80s and 90s, you know, the stockbroker was kind of glorified, that role. Right. And is there such a thing as a stockbroker anymore? Has that profession really gone to the wayside and it's more financial planning, or do you see those kind of guys anymore? I mean, I have no idea.
Yeah, there's still some stockbrokers. I think what's happened, you've seen a shift of them calling themselves nicer sounding names because of, you know, the vision, like you said, the boiler room, right?
Yeah.
Or Wolf of Wall Street kind of thing.
Right.
So they'll call themselves wealth managers or so, but there's still people definitely that are living off a transactional business, meaning they get paid on how much of this company they sell today, and that's not really necessarily long-term strategy. Right. But for some clients, there might be a piece of asset where they can do that. They have a bucket of money that can be for, hey, let's pick some stocks and see if some of them are winners. But for me, anything like that outside of, it's kind of like the gambling money. If somebody wants to do something that could win big but could lose big, I say, okay, let's peel off a piece of money that we know is not going to blow up your income plan or everything else, and let's see. Right. Maybe, but statistically, there's a good chance it won't hit the home run. I don't want you to put the money you need for your paycheck for the next 10 years in something that has a really high chance of not falling out, but it might do really good, you know?
Yeah. Gotcha. And then, you know, we've talked about your day-to-day life, and then we've also, as I expected, kind of gotten into just the finance industry and just retirement planning as a whole. But Social Security, you know, ever since I got out of college, you know, I would hear stories of it's not going to be around, and I keep getting older, and it's still there, and right. So, I mean, no one has a crystal ball, but what are your thoughts about changes to Social Security, will they ever happen? I mean, outside of maybe raising the benefit age or the full benefit age, but do you see it going away or anything along those lines?
I see it changing, and it's already been changing. But what happens when you deal with politicians, right? What's happening is the can's getting kicked down the road slowly over time. A lot of the planning I do when people are coming in and they're 60 years old, the money that's being brought in is still substantial, even though the trust fund, we know that'll eventually run out. So people of a certain age, we typically say 55 plus, they should be able to count on their benefit as we know it today, that we see it on their statement. Because what's happening is you'll see things like that move from 65 as full retirement age incrementally to 66 and 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 months all the way up to age 67. That added billions and billions of dollars in the system, just those little 2-month increments. Now, I expect every year the earnings cap raises, just about every year, to how much someone earns that pays into Social Security. That continues to go up. So that billions of dollars feeding into the system. So you continue the taxes, paying tax on Social. So there's a lot of variables that they'll incrementally are going to change. I wouldn't be surprised for us to see something like early retirement of Social Security at 62. They might start phasing that up to 62 in 2 months, 4 months, 6 months to 63. They can do that for a long time, but for that group, unfortunately, none of us here are in that group I mentioned. So for this younger group, I think there will be something there. I don't know that it's going to be sustained to be what it is today. So the message there is kind of like what we were talking about with Jason earlier, is we probably should do what we can to save our own pension, because it's not probably going to come from work anymore. And it's probably not going to be exactly what it was from Social Security, but maybe for our parents, it's still viable to be what it is as we know. But you think about that system, it was created to start at 65 when people died around 60. So it worked great then, right?
Right.
Now that we're living into our early 90s in a lot of cases, it needs to be adjusted. It's just not going to be viable. So I think we'll see it change. I think it'll be a shift, and it might just be by the time we get there, it might be we're drawing at 70 instead of 66. But I do think there will be something there. But to be able to think of it like our parents might not be realistic.
Yeah. What about you guys? Jason, Scott?
Yeah, well,
Probably be working till I'm 90.
Well, see, that's another retirement plan. The longer you work, the shorter the back end time frame we got to cover. Right?
That's right. So I'll need about $300 on me there at the end, and I should be able to make that.
Bounce the last check
to make that happen. Hey, so writing the book is just fascinating to me, especially 9 of them. Just how cool of an experience is that? How difficult is it, and what was your experience like?
So the first book, the one I told you was my favorite, it was painful. It took me almost 2 years to do, because it was the first time I really did anything like that. But what I realized, I was telling the same stories over and over again, and I was the only one that could communicate them. I couldn't delegate that to somebody else in my office or anything. So
Sure.
that first book was just about sharing that philosophy in a way that could have some scale. And we sold over 25,000 copies of that book. So I was able to get my message out to far more people than I could one-on-one communicate that with. So that was why I started. But then what happened is I did more things like what we're doing right now. I started doing more podcasting and videos. I started getting really intentional about topics. Like there's a Social Security book up at the top there, and that becomes such a big issue for clients. I started doing podcasts on the topics, and I basically created a content calendar where every chapter in that book was a transcribed podcast episode. So I got a lot faster at writing books. So a lot of the books, when I say I wrote them, a lot of them after the first 2 were transcribed and edited from me talking, because most people can talk what they know a lot easier than sit down at a blank sheet of paper.
Oh, sure.
So that's been really how I've been able to create content in kind of a quicker way and knock out some of those books. It's just being real intentional about the content calendar with what's the end goal.
Right. So on that first book, your favorite, do you remember the opening line?
Oh my gosh. It is the opening of the book is a quote. It's a quote from William James, and go figure, he was the father of modern psychology. And the quote was, "The greatest use of life is to spend it for something that will outlast it." So it was really about living a meaningful, fulfilling life was kind of the start of that philosophy.
That's great. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. And you got you're with us here. I mean, your technology looks a lot better than ours. You got the microphone there and the big screen. So I think I saw somewhere that do you own a radio station, or what's the deal there?
So what I do, there's a couple things. So the national thing, the brand I do is called the Retirement Resource, and that's kind of my brand to cater to that person, the demographic I serve, financial health, relationships. We interview and talk to people about kind of like the AARP for this demographic, but I'm just kind of hosting and facilitating it. So that's that show. But what you're seeing, John, is probably here locally in North Georgia. I do have a studio called North Georgia Business Radio X. And the point of that, it's kind of my local networking. I invite two local businesses owners every week, and I just kind of highlight and learn more and make friends with those local businesses. And it broadcasts out, one on podcast, but also on WDUN here in town on the weekends. So what it was for me, as opposed to doing some kind of a chamber group or BNI type of networking, I kind of created my own little environment that I control to get people. I mean, the easiest thing to sell in the world, hey, come in and let me highlight you in your business. And I have the opportunity to make friends with maybe, 70 to 100 business owners over the course of the year. So that's what that studio is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, you could mentor the three of us because you're doing what we want to do at some point. But that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, if you ask me the one secret to content creation, it's consistency. Right? It's that you say, if we're going to do this once a week, do it. I'd rather. Well, yeah, I learned early on I'd be ambitious at times and say I'm going to do 3 shows a week, and I was much better off doing much less but being consistent with it. And because that's how you're organically going to build your people. They're going to keep showing up looking for what you're doing.
Right. That's right. That's
Very
right.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking, I was going to point that out earlier whenever Scott was talking about how important is it for appearances and stuff. And I'm like, look at Beau. Look at his setup. He's got the professional mic. He's got the nice background. He's got the books and the thing. Scott's doing his from like a bedroom.
Yeah. Well, in my defense, I'm on vacation. So
Yes.
That's dedication. He's calling in on vacation, right, Scott?
that's right. I'm at the beach, Mexico Beach right now. So
nice.
Yeah.
Well, that being said, though, so the nice thing about this too is what we're talking about and teasing Scott about is when I'm traveling, I have a little mic that's in my bag, and I have a little suction light cube that goes on the back of my monitor. You can do this from anywhere. You can deliver content. So there's really no reason you can't be consistent. Now it's nice when I'm here because I know this is kind of my turf, and I feel good here, but you can do it from anywhere.
Awesome.
that's awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah, looks great.
And I'll tell you one other thing, and I don't mean to hijack on talking about that. My co-host on the show, on the local business show, he's in his 80s. Okay. And he loves it. He's a great broadcaster, Dr. Bill Lampton. And what has been really powerful for me watching him and him working with him over the years is I know, hey, as long as I can talk, I can deliver content and still, have that feeling of helping people and be viable. So that's always real encouraging. That it's unlike some of our businesses that, might burn out eventually, but hey, as long as we can deliver content, there's value we can be still putting out there.
Amen to that.
Very cool. Great point. Yeah, amen to that.
Well, I think we're bumping up against our time. Beau, really, really appreciate having you on the show. Don't hang up just yet because we're going to take a picture when we're done.
Okay.
But that's it for this week. And guys,
yeah, very insightful. Very insightful stuff.
Yes.
Very cool.
Enjoyed it, guys. Now,
absolutely.
Where are you guys around Atlanta, or where are you guys coming from?
Well, I live in North Forsyth, but I have a Gainesville address.
Okay.
And
I live in
Jason,
North Forsyth, but I have a Cumming address. So
Yeah.
I actually live right down the road from John.
yeah,
Okay.
we're both off Jotham Down,
Yeah.
and Scotty's
Not
in.
saying-
I'm out
Palmer or
in
something?
Powder Springs.
Powder Springs.
Yeah, the same place where The Rock just moved.
Oh wow. Yeah.
It's our claim to fame. That and there's a street named after Travis Tritt. So
Well, and Scotty's homework assignment is to get The Rock on this show, but we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
But anyway, well, good deal, everybody. Thanks for watching. Thank you, Beau.
Hey,
Oh,
real
go ahead,
quick.
Jason. Go ahead.
I was going to ask, for the listeners, Beau, where can anybody find you? I mean, do you have social media? Do you have a website? Can you share that
Sure.
real quick?
Yeah, sure. I think really good way to see kind of about that philosophy and how we do things. We trademarked something called a retirement success strategy that I think is really worth looking at on our website at richlifeadvisors.com. And same name on Facebook, LinkedIn, richlifeadvisors.com. And I'm Beau Henderson. And there's social media there that you could find out more or look up more about what we're about.
Perfect. Thank you, Jason. Thank you for bringing that up. Well, good deal, guys. Well, thanks again. Thanks for watching. Beau, thanks for being our guest. And we'll
always fun.
Yeah,
Have fun,
we'll
guys.
see you again soon. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.